real theme is Mozart, but the film, the great film, is worthy of analysis and of understanding. Recapturing our mood here, the film is a moral analysis of Salierie, a man who's angry at God, feels cheated, feels cheated. Notice the theme is a great one in literature. Job, this is what Job is about. Feels that he's been wronged by God, that God is unjust, and he kind of rebels against God. It's not fully understood. I think sometime we'll have to talk about Job, in my opinion. But back to Salierie. Now, as I remember, Mozart's father had arrived. The maid is spying on the Mozart family, including Mozart's father, Leopold. Finally, Leopold leaves, and we're getting toward the end of the film now. Mozart is very popular. Oh, and he starts writing operas. He writes first Les Nozze di Figaro, The Marriage of Figaro, and the play on which the opera is based is Le Mariage de Figaro, in French by Beaumarchais. This play had been banned in the Austrian Empire. In fact, it had been banned many places around Europe as inflammatory of class strife. That is, inflaming the passions against the aristocracy among middle class. So it had been banished. Salieri hears about Mozart's turning this banished play to music, and of course runs and tells the emperor. The emperor calls Mozart in. It's clear that the emperor is a very in fact he says he's a tolerant man. He is a kind and gentle man, but he's afraid of this play because his own sister Marie Antoinette is feeling a lot of pressure. This is now 1786. The French Revolution will begin in 1789, so we are nearing that time. Mozart argues passionately in favor of the play, as having nothing to do with politics at all. He says it's about love, jealousy and love. Well, it's about more than that, and certainly it does involve a certain perception of the aristocrats, but on the whole it's pretty kind. The emperor allows him to proceed. But during that interview with the usual courtiers in the room, including Salieri, the conservatives say, Mozart, why do you turn your great talents, your genius, to such a shabby topic? Why don't you deal with the gods? Well, Mozart, in a class Mozart says, the gods, always the gods. Who wouldn't rather hear his barber talk than the gods singing? And he uses some obscenity, and everyone says, oh my God, you used this language in front of the emperor. This happened once before, you might remember. Mozart calms down a little bit and he says, Sire, my job is only to make this the greatest music ever composed. Please allow me to do this. The emperor, who is fully aware, oh, by the way, I didn't finish telling, oh God, I have to back up because it's too wonderful. An earlier scene, when Mozart came to meet the emperor, you remember, I didn't finish that. Salieri had composed a little piece for piano in honor of Mozart. And so Salieri told the emperor about this, and the emperor said, conduct Mozart in, but slowly, because he has to come through many rooms of the palace, of course. And meanwhile, the emperor tries to prepare this little composition, badly. And when Mozart finally comes in, the emperor is playing this. Mozart's attention seems to be entirely focused on the other courtiers. And he's not even sure who the emperor is. So Mozart bows in his courtier manner, in his courtly manner, to the wrong guy. And the kind people, because they are kind, points toward the emperor, who is struggling on the piano with his very simple piece. The emperor gets up and says, Mozart, we did meet once when you were a child, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Then they have that talk about German opera, which I told you. But I didn't tell you the end of this. So, how does he get that? But, the emperor says, here is this piece of music that Herr Salierie has kindly composed for you. And Mozart says, I don't need the paper. You don't need the paper? I have it here. Well, he wasn't even paying attention, and he heard it once. Well, that's impossible. So, unforgettable scene. Show me, says the emperor. Mozart sits down, thinks for a second, and starts playing it perfectly, flawlessly. But then he starts to embellish it. Then he says, no, that doesn't work, does it? And he even says, how about this? The rest is quite simple, isn't it? It's a simple little piece, and then off goes Mozart, creating from it. And they're all standing there in astonishment, of course, and Salierie is consumed with rage. He's been humiliated. He's been humiliated and humiliated as this little genius plays this piece and then virtually ridicules it, mocks it, says it's really not worth much, but I will make it worth something. Wow. It's after this scene that Salierie returns to his apartment and throws the cross into the fire. And I told you about throwing the cross into the fire, but I didn't tell you about his humiliation. What an unforgettable scene. And by the way, that scene ends, fade out, with Mozart's obscene laughter, that cackle of his, which for Salierie represents Mozart and represents God's unfairness. Okay, returning to Le Nozze di Figaro, the Marriage of Figaro. Salierie is trying everything to block Mozart, and Salierie learns that there is some ballet in this opera. He runs to the emperor and says, Sire, Mozart's new opera has ballet. Oh no, he doesn't go to the emperor. He goes to the one of those men who, besides Salierie, hates Mozart. He is the director of public entertainment and things like that. So this man comes to the theater where Mozart is rehearsing. The singers are on stage, the dancers are on stage. This bitter man who hates Mozart comes in, listens and watches, and then goes up to Mozart and says, Mozart, let me see your score there. And then he starts tearing the pages of the ballet music. Now, there is a lot of great music in that opera, but arguably the greatest music in that opera, the greatest pieces are the ballet pieces. They are wonderful. And so Mozart, what are you doing? Are you insane? You can't do ballet. The emperor rules. Well, it must be at the same time. Oh, no. So Mozart must comply. So a week or 2 days later, Mozart is rehearsing again, and the dancers are up there dancing silently, no music. Absurd. The emperor comes in. No one knew he was coming, least of all Salierie. Salierie is watching, pleased that he has damaged Mozart's creation. He hasn't killed it, but he's damaged it. In comes the emperor and sits down and watches this absurd spectacle of the dancers dancing around to no music. And the emperor says, what is this? Is this some new modern theory of music? Or, I don't understand. Well, sire, you said no ballet. Well, but this is absurd. This is absurd. Mozart played the music. God, not twice. Okay, Mozart plays the music. The music is magical. It is a miracle. The opera will go on with the the ballet music. Okay, so of course, in Salieri's opinion, God has checked him in that little ploy. God defeated him. But all this is superstition, of course, but okay, this is how Salieri sees things. God, this is a struggle between himself, Salieri, and God. Okay, the opera goes on, but Salieri, at some expense to himself, makes sure that the opera is presented only 6 times. Well, to make money, he has to make it more than 6 times. So Mozart comes to complain to Salieri. Of course, he doesn't know what Salieri is doing. 6 times? I don't understand. What don't people like? Oh, I forgot to tell you something before, but that's okay. And Salieri absentmindedly says, I don't know. Well, tell me, did you like it? I thought it was wonderful, says Salieri, truthfully, of course. Because as I realized in talking to you about the movie last time, and I've never realized this before, Salieri is not entirely damnable because of his sincere love of music. This means that he can feel joy, and that joy is kind of divine. It's just that he is so disappointed, but he's a bitter little man, but he's disappointed more. Okay, and that is very important, because if I'm wrong there, and I'm not wrong, if I were wrong there, then the film would be flawed at its core, because it would be flawed in the sense that it's about the damnation of a man, and at the end he's not damned at all. He's laughing, he's maybe even happy. So, no, he's not damned. He thinks he's in a struggle at war with God, but in a sense he's not. Okay. So, I thought it was wonderful. Then why didn't the emperor like it? And Salieri explains. The poor man, the emperor, can listen to music for 1 hour. You give him 4 hours. You overwhelm the poor man. He has a very limited capacity for music, for beauty, for anything. He is kind of a simple man, after all. And yes, the emperor was, in the film, and probably really, a very simple man, but a good man, a good-hearted man. And the film is quite accurate, as far as I know. Anyway, so Salieri explains, so Mozart is disappointed, but he says something that, basically he says to Salieri, yes, it's certainly the best opera ever written, compared with the trash that is nowadays being written. Well, this is my paraphrase of what happens. Whenever Mozart speaks, he says something that slashes or lacerates, cuts Salieri's heart and his pride. And Mozart doesn't know or care that he's hurting Salieri. He's so self-absorbed, but he's so confident in his own genius. He's so confident that what he's writing is the best music imaginable, that's how genius sometimes is. Okay, so next, Mozart, the film moves on now, and Mozart is sick. He's drinking every day, morning and night, composing, and now things are happening very fast. What am I skipping? I don't want to skip anything, but marital difficulties. There are difficulties between Stanzi and Mozart because of his drinking, spending too much, of course. And sometimes Mozart goes out late at night and parties. And we see a couple of scenes like that. Skipping other scenes too. We're getting toward the end. Salieri has a plan. We don't know this until a little later, but Saliere's plan, late one night, there's a knock on Mozart's door. Mozart is composing, Stanzi is there too, and Mozart opens the door, and there is a man dressed all in black with a kind of like a death mask. Scary. And the man speaks from behind the mask, but we can hear that it's Salierie. It's Salierie. And Salierie says, I want you to compose a piece. I will pay you well for it. I will pay you in advance already. It's a requiem. Requiem is a mass for the dead. The recent dead, presumably. I'll tell you what most people don't understand, I think. It took me a long time, too. Saliere's plan is to pay Mozart to write this requiem. At the same time, it's implied in the film that he's poisoning Mozart, probably in the wine. Little poison. And this explains Mozart's increased illness. Now, his plan, Saliere's plan, is that Mozart will complete the requiem and then die, and he, Salieri, with the requiem in his hand, will claim that he has written this requiem in honor of Mozart. Thus he will defeat God by killing Mozart and have the last laugh by claiming that he wrote the requiem to honor Mozart. What a joke on God. That's his plan. Now, what Salieri doesn't know is that Mozart has been hired to write another opera at the same time. And this opera, which will be the final one, he's writing for a popular theater, not the emperor's aristocratic theater, but a popular theater. And this is a very different kind of opera, and this is the magic flute, die Zauberflöte. He's writing it at the same time as he's writing the requiem, and this was common for him, to be writing two pieces at the same time, quite different. Both people, the theater director for Magic Flute and Salieri, are putting great pressure on him to complete their pieces. Both men have paid him in advance some money. His wife is also putting great pressure on him because she doesn't like this composing for the popular theater. It's too vulgar, it's too silly. But Mozart thinks, and he's right, very profitable. But he's getting pressure from all sides, and his health is failing too. Now, in the midst of this, he has finished Don Giovanni. Don Giovanni, in my opinion, is the greatest thing he ever composed. And when we talk about the Mozart's music, I'll tell you more about Don Giovanni. I'll also tell you about all the operas and the various other genres in which he composed that I know. Okay, so he finishes Don Giovanni. Now, all I'll tell you now is that in Don Giovanni is another man who's probably angry at God. For some reason it's unstated. But as perhaps you know, Don Giovanni, Don Juan, the original piece was Spanish. Don Giovanni is a Spanish nobleman who loves to seduce women, and is a comic, more comic than serious opera. Mozart is at his best in this genre. Now, Dr. Shin points out to me that we've already done Don Giovanni on a different tape, perhaps a long time ago. That's my excuse for not remembering. I hope you see that tape. But in the opera, the key scene comes at the end, when Don Giovanni has invited the commendatore, this man whom he killed, the father of this woman whom he tried to rape. The statue speaks to him, and Don Giovanni, proud, scornful, disdainful man that he is, invites the statue to come to dinner, and the statue accepts. So in the final scene, boom, 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 we get the entrance of the commendatore onto the stage. Don Giovanni, scornful, disdainful, haughty as always, in the climactic moment, shakes hands with the commendatore. But the point is that in terms of the film, and quite possibly true, Meanwhile, key thing, Leopold Mozart, father, has died. And at his death, the relationship between father and son was not good. There had not been a real reconciliation because of the bitterness of the time when he had lived there with them, his bitterness about the marriage, his bitterness about all the composing and not lessons, spending too much and all that. So, he has died. And in terms of the film, Salieri is sure that when Mozart is writing Don Giovanni, that commendatore is his father. Maybe, maybe not. But Salieri is sure, and in the film, he's right. So that when that man on the statue comes, who was killed by Don Giovanni, he seems to be Mozart's father. And the music is so powerful, so eerie, so disturbing, so psychologically disturbing, profound, really. Pre-Romanticism is what it is. 1790 is our date here. That Mozart is himself disturbed by the music and almost collapses as Don Giovanni shakes hands with the commendatore, dad, and is dragged to hell screaming. Mozart seems to foresee his own damnation in that scene. And dad seems to be God. And this is Freudian, very Freudian analysis of religion. This displacement of feelings toward father projected onto God. Okay. Mozart's falling apart. Then we get the scene. Now, by the way, Stanzi is out of town. Her mother thinks she's exhausted and gives Stanzi money to go to a spa for a week or two. And she's supposed to have a good time there, but she can't. She's disturbed. And finally she wants to leave. She's with another man, but she can't go through with this kind of playful diversion. And she leaves. And she rides all night, on the key night, rides all night to return to her husband. On this very night, a couple of things are happening. First of all, Mozart's giving the premiere of Zauberflöte, the magic flute. Mozart himself is conducting. And, no, he's not. No, he's not conducting. He's playing the harpsichord in key music of Papageno. He's playing this. And while he's playing this, he's feeling very dizzy. He's very ill. And in the middle of it, he collapses on the floor. Salieri's there watching. He's kind of expecting this. And Salieri immediately orders men to put him in the carriage and take him home. Salieri will take care of him, puts him in bed, takes care of him in a very touching, kind of filial sort of way, like he's a son. Mozart wakes up and Salieri says, "You collapsed, I have brought you home. I thought you hated me. I thought you hated my music. My God, I worship your music," he says, truthfully. And Salieri, somehow Mozart gets the idea, I want to finish my requiem. He's not aware that he's dying. And Salieri says, go ahead, dictate, and I will be your secretary. Mozart dictating to Salieri, notes, all the technical things. Salieri doesn't get it very often. He wants to understand. He needs to understand, because remember, he's going to claim this as his own composition. Mozart becomes very impatient with him, but this is genius at work. Anyway, he almost finishes it, and then he must sleep. Salieri too is exhausted. By now it's almost dawn. While both of them are asleep, this is almost the final scene of the opera. While both of them are asleep, in comes Stanzi with their little son. They have one son. Many children of theirs died in infancy. And she wakes up Salieri Salieri falls on the floor. What are you doing in my house? She knows that Salieri does not like Mozart. She understands. She doesn't know the full depth of his malice, but she knows. Madam, he was sick. He collapsed at the theater. I brought him here. Well, now I want you to leave. What are these papers? What is this composition? Madam, I was helping him. She picks up all the papers, puts them together, puts them into a little cabinet, locks the door. Salieri's plan, crushed, right there. God wins again, according to Salieri's way of view of things. That is his perfect plan, destroyed because he fell asleep. So he must leave. He can't do violence to the woman. Mozart wakes up briefly. Stanzi says, I'm sorry, I love you so much, and then leave. Salieri must go. Stanzi returns to Mozart. He's dead. That's how he dies, according to the film. Very believable, or great theater at least. Now, the second to last scene is the funeral of Mozart. The funeral. Now, according to tradition, no one attended that funeral, but Salieri's there. Some of those courtiers are there. Some high figures are there. Not the funeral itself, but they pay respect to the body as it's put on to a carriage. The carriage takes it out to a pauper's grave, P-A-U-P-E-R. It's a rainy, dismal day, and we get the two grave diggers, almost Hamlet-like, on terrible weather. A priest, they just kind of empty the body into the waiting hole, throw lye, some disinfectant, on it. The priest says a perfunctory, in the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost, or something. All finished. Now, the final scene. We return to where we've been all along, because remember, this whole film has been the recitation, the narration by Salieri to the priest in the insane asylum where Salieri is, because he tried to commit suicide. And so the camera returns to Salieri and the priest, who has listened patiently, astounded, and it's clear over his head. He has received a lesson in Christian moral theology, basically, from Salieri. That's what this is amounted to. And from that point of view, this is ironically educational. That is, the court composer, now a very old man, because all this takes place years after the death of Mozart, when he tried to commit suicide. Remember the opening scene, the attempted suicide by Salieri. So the final scene then, at the end of that little scene, the priest, justly almost humiliated, but he knows he has received a remarkable lesson. And at the very end, Salieri is wheeled out of his room through the asylum, where we see these twisted human beings doing these strange things, some in cages, 18th, 17th century style, which was strip them bare of almost all clothes so they can't hurt themselves. Of course, if they misbehaved, someone was there with a whip. I mean, of course, imagine. But Salieri is being wheeled on like a wheelchair, and the final moment, Salieri, bless you, my sons. This ironic, deliciously sardonic scene. Bless you, my sons. Bless you, bless you. To these crazy people, right? Who are all looking at him kind of uncomprehendingly. Yes, I'm the patron saint of mediocrities. Bless you all. He's talking to us, too. Yes, you and I, all of us, except very few, are all total mediocrities, and I'm your patron saint, he says. Well, it's delicious. But he's got a smile on his face, and he knows he's being witty, and he knows we're laughing with him. And the whole scene is delicious. And as I told you, until this moment, telling you about the film, I thought that ending was inconsonant, at odds with, not in harmony with, inconsonant with what happens in the film. But now I see that, yes, it's a perfect ending. And yes, it is in harmony, because the man worships musical beauty. And that's good enough, not to send him to heaven maybe, but to keep him out of hell. Okay, the end of the film. Now Mozart's music. Let's discuss genres as far as I know. The genres that I know well are the operas, the piano concertos, and the symphonies. A little less well, the string quartets and quintets. It was my ambition at one point in my life. I've told you that at one point in my life I wanted to see all the Rembrandts in the world. I also wanted to record, somehow buy or record, all of Mozart's music. I don't know how close I came, but I came a little close. So I know a lot of his music as an amateur and as a non-musician. The symphonies. Well, the first 25 are very negligible. He wrote 41 symphonies. But his symphonies are great. I'm not sure they're the equal of Haydn, though. Now, Haydn he knew. Haydn was his contemporary. And an older man, and a very kind man, a very good man Haydn was, by all accounts, almost a saintly man. And he is known to have said, you are the greatest composer I know in the world. Haydn said that to Mozart. Generous, great man. Haydn's symphonies are slightly better, in my opinion. There are some greater moments, again, in my opinion. But the symphonies are pretty great. The last one is called the Jupiter Symphony. The number 40, everyone knows. We hear it, or we used to hear it on the Seoul trains to Seoul. When we were arriving in Seoul, they would play that canned version of it. My own favorite, I think, is the Hofner Symphony. Now, Hofner is number 35. It's wonderful. Generally, let's say 35 to 41 are great. There's the Prague Symphony, which is number 38, I think. Those symphonies are great. They're his best. Before number 35, you'll have to look pretty hard to find anything good. But those last 6, 35, 37 are wonderful. Powerful, magical. The piano concerti, he wrote 27 of them. 27 is negligible. 26 too. I almost think he was, if the film is right, he must have been sick. But the great ones are numbers 17 through 24. Wonderful. Just wonderful. So he's already, I mean, who's greater than Mozart? I'll discuss that question, in my opinion, a little later. The serenade music that he wrote, some of which is very famous. In fact, Eine kleine Nachtmusik, da 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 da, you know. Known to everyone. Let's see now. What else? The string quartets are negligible, in my opinion. Maybe Haydn's are better there too. As far as I know. Let me think of genres. We've got most of them though. Oh, the sonatas, piano sonatas. Some of them are wonderful too. There he excelled a little earlier because he was total master of the piano. Of course, we didn't have the full piano then. The piano becomes the piano only for Beethoven. I'm not sure of years, but I would guess around 1810. Before that, we have harpsichords and clavichords and all that. I'm sketchy on my history there. Okay. But the piano sonatas are charming. Now, the word rococo is used of Mozart, and it's correctly so up to a point. Let's discuss the term rococo, and then we'll discuss pre-romanticism, because that's where Mozart is, if he can be put in one of these slots. And of course anyone can, up to a point. Rococo, which is represented in painting by Watteau. Maybe I'll show a painting, man. Watteau is so early, but he captures it well. I'm not sure how viewable this is. Typically it deals with love. It's a journey to or from Kythera. Kythera was an island off the southern coast of Greece, sacred to Aphrodite, goddess of love. And so this is lovers either. There are two versions of this painting, by the way, and one may be a journey to Kythera, and the other may be a journey from, the departure from. Doesn't matter anyway. The light-heartedness, the kind of melancholy maybe, the hedonism, the open hedonism, that is, the business of life is pleasure, captured in Rococo architecture and interior design, all that, wonderful, but pretty lightweight, pretty, if not frivolous. Watteau hits a deep chord, and Mozart's writing 40 years after Watteau painted, but the music is still Rococo. In music, Rococo is a turn from the complexity of Baroque, the fugues, the overly ingenious virtuosity, showing off of complex arrangements of so many notes, which Bach was the master of, but Bach transcends too. Rococo is a reaction against that in favor of simplicity, and nothing is more simple than the melodies of Mozart's piano sonatas, and even, especially the slow movements of those piano concerti. The slow movements often just one finger, left hand, nothing. Well, that's the total opposite from Bach with his endless convolutions and complexities. And the spirit of Rococo is totally different from Baroque too, which tends toward tormented religiosity. Okay. But mostly that's young Mozart. Later Mozart transcends Rococo by far, and would be called, I would say, pre-romantic. He is the perfect pre-romantic composer, I would say. I've never read this, I'm just using terms that are used in literature and in painting too. But pre-romanticism is the rumbling of emotionalism, of powerful emotions and passions, the exaltation of passion as a good in itself. If we see the ending of Don Giovanni and that music, that is perfect pre-romanticism. And it leads directly to Beethoven at his profoundest, at his best, maybe. The Fifth Symphony, at least. Okay. Okay, there's that. Now the operas. I guess I have discussed Don Giovanni before. I probably discussed The Marriage of Figaro too. I have no idea. No? Boy, it deserves some time. We have some time anyway. I also want to tell you about Così fan tutte, because I haven't seen many Koreans who are aware of Così fan tutte. Not that I know musicians. I guess musicians are probably aware of it. But educated Koreans whom I know tend not to know Così fan tutte. So I'll tell you about it. It's the first of his great operas. There are 4 great operas. I'd call Così fan tutte great, though some perhaps would not. I would. Le Nozze di Figaro, The Marriage of Figaro, Don Giovanni, and Die Zauberflöte, The Magic Flute. These are four great operas, and really, in my opinion, nothing is greater. Some equal it by Verdi. Aida equals it. Aida is great. But not much equals those operas of Mozart. Così fan tutte. The name means, thus all women do. There's a crude translation. That is, all women are like that. It's cynical. It's rococo. Two couples, lovers, live in Naples, Napoli, perfect place for this kind of thing. The two men are soldiers, stationed there. The two women are close friends, and they are the central characters. There's also an older man who's very cynical, and his view is così fan tutte. And what he means by that is, put any woman, what the cynical point is, and maybe this wouldn't be very popular with Koreans, but the music goes far beyond it. Put any woman in the right situation and she will betray the man whom she claims to love. Pretty cynical. Of course, there's a lot of blind sexism here. That is, the men do too. So it's totally unfair, and I think Mozart, in fairness to Mozart rises above the libretto because he makes it very clear that men are certainly not superior to, have no moral superiority to women in this regard. By the way, a word about the libretti. The three great libretti, the Italian ones, Così fan tutte, Le Nozze, and Don Giovanni, were all written by the same man, very interesting man, Lorenzo da Ponte. He was an Italian priest, but this is the age of kind of cynicism and worldliness, a cynical, witty man, tremendously witty. And these three libretti, there are none better. It's impossible. They are the best libretti in opera. Unfortunately, most of Verdi's libretti are beneath him, are unworthy of him. But Mozart's three libretti there are worthy of Mozart. Their collaboration is the best that opera has ever reached, or could reach. That's not quite true. Der Rosenkavalier in the 20th century, you must know this. Strauss, Richard Strauss, not the waltz guy, one of the great composers of the 20th century, teamed up with Hugo van Hofmannsthal, who was a significant author, for 2 or 3 operas, and theirs are just about the equal. Rosenkavalier is worthy of Mozart and Da Ponte. Anyway, this Da Ponte character is really interesting because after this time he wound up going to America, and he spent the last 20 or 30 of his years of his life as a professor of Italian literature at Columbia. Wow! Wow! Isn't that something? A little bit of trivia. Lorenzo da Ponte achieved greatness in those 3 operas. Witty, charming, perfectly reflecting Mozart's feelings, Mozart's opera, perfection. Anyway, The Marriage of Figaro. First, Così fan tutte. So this older man challenges the men to a bet. He says, let me take charge and I will show you Così fan tutte. The men accept the bet. So the deal is, it's kind of silly really, the 2 soldiers announce to the girls that they've been sent away. We get the tearful, cynically tearful farewell, and the men say goodbye. But they're not leaving at all. They're sticking around and they're returning in disguise. And the 2 men return in disguise, and Wu tried to court the 2 ladies, but each tries to court not his own, but his friend's lover. Disturbingly, because this is a little disturbing, Into this then comes some stuff that's not entirely cute. That is rivalry, humiliation, tension. So, needless to say, these two succeed by somewhat different means in seducing these two girls who are mercilessly tricked and treated, and in the end the man wins the bet, but everyone is forgiving, everyone forgives. And this forgiveness is a big thing in Mozart, because the crowning moment of such a theme in any art form comes at the end of Le Nozze di Figaro, one of the great, great moments in European art of any kind, any level, Shakespeare, anything. Now, again, the librettist, I'm changing now to Le Nozze di Figaro. Here the main character is Figaro, who had appeared in other operas. He was pretty much created by Rossini, Italian composer living in Paris, and he wrote the opera Figaro, which became very popular. So Mozart uses the same character a little later. Figaro is getting married to Susanna. Both of them are servants of the Count and Countess, who appeared in the early opera too. And the Count has arranged for the bedroom of Figaro and Susanna to adjoin the bedroom of the Count and Countess, so that they can both continue to serve the Count and Countess. But we learn early that the Count has other ideas. The Count is restless. The Count wants to seduce Susanna. He's restless. This is painful because the Countess, Rosina, is a dignified and wonderful and tender-hearted woman. But gradually she learns what the Count is up to. So the three of them, Figaro, Susanna, and the Countess, set out to, let's say, teach the Count a lesson. Other characters are involved, and it's a very complex and not very successful libretto, really. I know I'm contradicting myself, because it's based on the play, and I already told you about this from the movie Amadeus, the play that the emperor had banned because of class distinctions. You're getting a sense of what's going on here now, because the Count, who's a good man and has a good heart, a witty, charming man, but certainly he's restless, is shown at a disadvantage here. And the hero is Figaro, who almost always outwits everybody. Well, even in this, but in this opera, the chaotic story, which Dal Ponte had to use, it's chaotic, but it's so full of good things, funny things, wonderful melodies, great libretto in individual lines, and in wit. But the complexity, the very complex plot prevents it from being the greatest opera, I think. And for me, the greatest operas are Don Giovanni and Aida. Aida of Verdi. Don Giovanni's better. And really, I think the music's better too. Don Giovanni and Aida, the peak of opera. Second place, Nozze di Figaro and Der Rosenkavalier, and Zauberflöte, Magic Flute. Those three I would put on the second level. Okay, sorry if that's interesting to you. In the end, we get a nighttime scene. It's a festival, a celebration, and the Countess is in disguise and Susanna's in disguise. So we get the absurd situation of the Count thinks he is wooing Susanna in the dark alcove, trees, bushes, but really he's wooing his own wife in disguise. And the grand revelation comes. It's very hard to understand, actually. I've reread it many times. But basically what happens is everyone emerges. The last to emerge, though, they think is Susanna. Out she comes, dressed as Susanna, takes off her mask. It's the Countess. The Count is humiliated, begs for forgiveness. Whew, tremendous moment. Tremendous in Amadeus too, by the way. It's fully appreciated, fully exploited, fully presented at in all its grandeur. She forgives. The music is so amazing that opera can't go beyond that. It's true, this opera has the great moment of opera. That's it. Rival maybe the final scene of Aida, when they're both the two lovers are discovered that they have been buried alive together. Tremendous. But then the final moment of the film is a little bit puzzling and challenging, I think. What's going on here? Because we get the slowdown of the music and the powerful forgiveness of the Countess, and then a slow crescendo of and the speed and the volume pick up, and the final words repeated over and again by everybody on the stage, and there are a lot of people on the stage, are "Coriam tutti, coriam tutti." This is very important to me, by the way. It's in my poem, my first already done poem. Coriam tutti, coriam tutti. This means let's all run. And run to what? Run to enjoy the things of this life. Enjoy life, snatch pleasure. A classical message, Roman especially, but hardly Christian. Hedonistic, to be sure. What's Mozart up to here? We have the moment of forgiveness, which, as Salierie says in the film, seems to be universal forgiveness. That, as Salierie says, that music seems to suggest universal mercy, universal forgiveness. And I think he's right, or the makers of the film are right, and it's probably been said by many people before. But then we turn from that to this hedonistic, this frantic hedonism. Frantic hedonism. Come, let's go and have fun. Now wait, what was this forgiveness about? This was the forgiveness, she was forgiving him for his intention, full intention to deceive her and commit adultery. Seduce Susanna. She forgives him for that. But the ending seems to say, let's all run out and have pleasure, and among those pleasures are certainly adultery. That is, let's all go and have a good time. And they don't mean drink a Coke and talk about Jesus, so to speak. You see what I mean? As a cynical person I used to know said, in perfect mimicry and mockery of a certain level of American culture, let's pull up a Coke and talk about Jesus. Woo! Cynical. But conservative, fundamentalist American religiosity is at that, at that contemptible level. Okay, in my opinion. Wow. We'll talk about that sometime, maybe. Religion in America. Whew. Not that I'm an expert. I'm not. But I've seen some. I hope I haven't obscured this point. The ending is puzzling, if not contradictory, or if you like, all-embracing. If you try to, I must get to the bottom of this, and I'm not at the bottom. Let's say after the forgiveness, we get this universal, let's all go and have a good time. If we can reconcile these contradictory elements, if we have a kind of paradox here, what the paradox means is, I would say, a kind of tolerance toward our human foibles, our weaknesses, our hedonism, our fundamental unseriousness. Could Mozart and Da Ponte be saying this? Possible. Possible. That is, a moment of human greatness has just occurred. The forgiveness of the Countess. if we analyze that more closely, really she didn't have much choice. I'm afraid the opera is flawed. Dramatically flawed. Doesn't make sense. The ending is flawed, incoherent, doesn't make sense. I'm going to look into this more, and I have many times. How many times? But I think that's where we are. Her moment of forgiveness is, like all human moments, tainted. There is no such thing as the untainted moment of human experience. Our motives are so complex, our vanity is so all-pervasive, that you can't find a moment when we're free of the complexity of our motives, and fundamentally our vanity, I would say, and that's a Christian anthropology, which I accept completely. So her moment is flawed, and that it says it should be. If it's not flawed, in fact, if it were not flawed, it would be totally incredible. We could not take it seriously, except in comic books. And then to turn to this unbridled hedonism, this permission to go out and have a good time and do whatever we want in a kind of hedonistic way. What's going on here? I think it's incoherent, but the music is so brilliant, so miraculous. I love that Coriam Tutti. I love the ending. I love the moment of forgiveness. The trouble is you can't reconcile them. It doesn't make sense. But I'm glad to have told you about this. So many great songs, arias and songs and duets in this opera. So many. But Don Giovanni has just as many. And maybe they're better. Even better. And no one else comes close. In opera, no one comes close. Except for Verdi. Aida, Traviata, Rigoletto. His greatest ones, I would say. Okay, thank you.